All right, welcome to the Highly Addictive Podcast. I'm Mike.
And I'm Josh.
And I'm Ashley.
And we're really excited tonight. We have a good podcast. Before we start, there's a couple of things I wanted to mention. We're doing a fundraiser, so we're collecting donations and gifts for a couple of gift baskets we're putting together. I want to thank Tara and my friend Krista for their donations. Tara put in 3 months of personal coaching for our self-care gift basket. My friend Krista is an artist, and she did some hand-blown drinking glasses, which is pretty sick. They look really cool. And so if you want to get involved with this fundraiser, just let us know. You can email us at highlyaddictivepodcast@gmail.com or just get at us through Facebook. Let's just get right into it. We have Ashley with us tonight, which is super exciting. Big part of the recovery community. You have how many? You have a couple of sponsees, or?
I have 2 girls that I'm working with right now.
Nice. And really positive person. So this is exciting. Glad that you have us on. You just seem
thank you.
Really stoked and excited. Very passionate about recovery.
Yeah, you're coming up on 4 years, I'm guessing?
Yeah, I'll have 4 years at the end of January.
Nice.
Yeah, so that's exciting.
Yeah, I just got my 4-year last week. So
Yeah,
it's just a year, I know.
Go to treatment?
Yeah. She came in right around the time that I was going to the secondary extended phase. And it's just I can't believe it's been 4 years. It's so weird. It's I hate the build up to time. You know what I mean? When the build up to the day is just makes me feel bad.
Oh my God. My first year, I remember, I was just such a disaster. It was I was reliving it. I was back in my dad's basement screaming and crying for help. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now it's I get so excited, but then I still get nervous and weirded out. It's just crazy because your body remembers, right? At least I believe that. Your body remembers those things, and the healthier you get, you really remember. You start to reflect on what it really was like. In the last few days, I think of anyone's using, it's fucking trash. Let's be honest, it's horrible, right?
Not a good time.
Well, literally, the day after, I went and got a multiple year tag on Tuesday. The day after, ever since, it's just been easy sailing. I feel so much better.
Yeah.
And for the month before, I was just kind of in a funk and just being why do I feel like this? And then I'm thinking I've had really shitty Octobers and Novembers for a decade.
Yeah.
And spanning before I even got clean, and spanning even into when I was clean, getting kicked out of my sober house and shit like that. That's just so much that's just compounded around that date that I don't know, something in my head just
it's a seasonal thing.
I can feel it more than even think about it. I'm not even reflecting or thinking about it, and then I'm just feeling shitty, and then you said, it's in my body, and then I realize it's because this date's around the corner.
Totally. And mine is right after, a month after Christmas. So and I already don't like Christmas. So I'm all of Christmas, I'm just holy fuck, here we go. It's another holiday. We're coming up. But what I find the craziest about time is how each year's been so different for me. My first year was just I gotta stay sober. I gotta stay sober. I gotta stay sober. And then I got a year, and then I was okay, now what? I thought it was going to be fireworks. Life was going to be so cool.
You just make it past this.
Yeah, and
this
I'm all I got to do is make
this.
a year. And then it was oh, fuck. I got to keep making years. I got to do a year every year.
When you think about the day after that 1 year.
Yeah.
And then you're just oh shit, that's actually not that long. You know what I mean?
I know.
Whereas when you're at 9 months or 6 months, you're holy fuck, how am I going to make
It's
it to a
forever.
year?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then you get past that, and then you're fuck, I'm still a newcomer, you know?
Oh my God, somebody once told me that you're a newcomer for the first 5 years. The second they told me that, it's been that's my motto. People are what are you doing? You have 3 years. You should be a little bit smarter than that. And I'm I'm a fucking newcomer till 5 years. I'm a fucking newcomer.
Yeah.
But you change so much, and at least I changed so much. My second year was figuring out that, I don't even know, it was just life stuff, right? Got my own place, stayed in my own place, wasn't moving around a shit ton, learning how to be an adult because I'd never been an adult. And then my third year was kind of figuring out who I am, what my real passions are besides like recovery, like what I am outside of the program. And then this year's just like, I don't even know. Like, I can't even explain it. This year's been the craziest one so far. So much stuff happens all the time, right?
Yeah, it's just life, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like I've moved like my new year to November 4th, which is my clean date. So it's just like a new year every year.
Yeah.
It's like that feeling of like when you're gonna go to school in like August.
Yes.
It's like the build up and then and then you're like, okay, it's September 1st, like fucking time to get my books and shit. And like, this year's gonna be different. This year's gonna be good. I'm gonna get fucking honor roll. I'm gonna be on the fucking basketball team or whatever, right? Like, like that's how I feel like every November. So I'm happy that's passed, but yeah.
That's amazing. Congrats.
Yeah, no, it's
so
crazy.
But generally, yeah, just before we get into the recovery part, we usually have our guests kind of like give us a little bit of our backstory and like the kind of the question that Josh came up with that like is our kind of go-to question is like, where did addiction kind of start for you? And like, when did you know you were fucked? Like you kind of said that you kind of knew like pretty early on, like it wasn't.
Yeah, well, I think, my story, like I grew up in an alcoholic home and like, I remember, you see that meme online and it's like, girls don't grow up wanting to be strippers, but like I grew up wanting to be fucked up. Like, I remember being like 8 years old, 9 years old, being like, I can't wait to start drinking. Like, I can't wait to start smoking cigarettes. And so I started really, really young. And, it was a lot of fun because I was really young, but it was also really embarrassing because I always wanted more, like from the jump. So like after I tried drinking at like 8, 9, I was like 10 years old having sleepovers. My friends don't want to drink yet. And I'm like, come on. Let's take your mom's bottle of wine. And they're like, what? I don't want to steal from my mom.
You were that friend, yeah.
Me, right? And I'm like, oh, fuck, this kid's whack. Gotta get a new friend. And, my grandma got really, really sick when I was 14. And it was the first time that I used knowing that that it was going to change my feelings.
Okay.
So, like, the part of where did it get fucked? It got fucked right from the jump. Like, I wanted to be messed up from the jump. But it was like 14 and then 15 when I was using regularly to change my feelings. Like, and, I feel like, now I look at it, I like robbed myself of an opportunity of growing up, right? Like it was just, by the age of 16, my family tried to put me in a detox center. I lasted a day and a half before I got out. Like I just walked out. They couldn't get me court ordered. And I chose drugs and alcohol over my family at 16 years old. Like they're begging me to be sober and I couldn't. Like, like that's like when I think about it now, I get really emotional. Like that's so sad. Like I can't imagine like some teenager choosing that over their family. And so, and it's weird because I'll talk to people and they'll like, especially like I work in a job in the service industry and like, people are like junkies and this and that. And I'm like, you don't really understand. There's no choice. Like for me, there was no choice. It was like mom and dad or drugs. And it was like drugs every fucking time, no matter what. It was always drugs for me. And, by 18, 19, I crossed every single moral boundary. There's nothing I wouldn't do. There's nothing I didn't want to do, right? There wasn't like people talk about drawing that line in the sand. But there was never a line drawn in the sand. I was like, what do I got to do? Okay, I'm going to do it. Like there was no like,
okay, it's a problem. I'll never let myself do X, Y, or Z.
Exactly.
It was just like, you're just like, well, whatever I need to do, that's what I got to do.
Yeah, 100%. And then I think about it now and I'm like, that's crazy. And then when I got to treatment, I was like, well, I never did heroin. So I must not be as bad as other people. But then there's people that are doing heroin that wouldn't do the same shit as me. Right? And I'm just like, wow, what the fuck? Like, it's crazy how powerful the disease itself is. And it honestly is controlled. It controlled my whole life. Like the whole growing up bit of my life was completely controlled around substances. So when I got here, I didn't even want to admit to being like powerless because I was like, that means I'm weak.
Yeah.
But when I look at the grand scheme of it, like I was powerless really young. Like, and I've been trying to get clean. Like I remember being like 15 or 16 and my mom got clean and I like wouldn't want to use. So I would like make her drag me to a meeting. And so I would like sit in a meeting and I could relate to these like 50-year-old women that were talking about like the obsession with drugs and alcohol. And I was like, well, this is fucking weird, but it was never enough to stop me, right?
Right. You still like, and it's interesting that even at a young age, you were like conscious of the fact that it's changing your feelings.
Yeah.
I think a lot of like, I fucking had no idea like that's what I was doing for the longest time. Like, oh, I'm trying to escape my feelings.
Yeah.
But still doing that, but just not having any kind of awareness around it.
Well, I think for me too, because like I said, like I grew up wanting to be messed up, that a part of me was like, I'm living the dream, right? And
I identify with that too.
Yeah, and I never had like, you know, I mean, I've had alcohol poisoning a couple times, but never to the amount that most of my normie friends even had it. So I was like, well, like, look at where my parents come from. Like, I'm a super drug addict. Like, I can use whatever, how much, I can drink anyone under the table. Like, this is what my life is supposed to be. How lucky am I to be living this dream?
To have this huge high tolerance and
yeah, right. And then I was like, this is sweet. But I mean, when I was 19, by the time I was 19, like I was involved not only in a drug and alcohol lifestyle, but like, you know, a completely different lifestyle that was like literally putting my life at risk. Like, you know, like involved in fighting and like, and then, you know, at 19 too, it got to a point that I was just so suicidal and I wasn't dying. Like, that's the point. Like, I wasn't dying no matter what I did, no matter if I would do so much drugs that I'd feel sick or drink so much that I was vomiting. Like, I just wasn't dying. It was never enough. And, I started I started acting out through violence. Like, I would start picking fights with like full grown men, hoping that they would be the one to take me out.
Wow. Yeah.
Right. And it didn't work, obviously, because I'm here.
That's good.
And then I got into an altercation and it was enough for me to be scared. And I went to my mom's house that night. I couldn't go back to the house I was staying at because I was homeless. Like, I was literally homeless from 16 till 19. I lived on my friends' couches, like, or their grandparents' couches. I had my own place for a bit that I had with like, that I got. I had some money, but like, I was homeless. Like, there's no fucking denying what it was. Like, I was like, well, my friends' families took care of me. I was like a bum.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I was like, you know what I mean? And so I got sober for a little bit. But when I got sober for the little bit, I mean, I was drinking enough Red Bull to hallucinate sometimes. I still dated drug dealers. I started dating right away in the program. And then that wasn't enough. So then, yeah, I started dating drug dealers. I was clubbing all the time. I was like, this is sweet. Trance shows. I'm the only one that's sober. But I never changed my mentality and I never did any of the work. And I went out. And then I went out for 5 years. And every single moral boundary that I thought I had crossed by 18, 19, I either like crossed it again or I went further, right? Like, I got myself into more messed up relationships where, I mean, I honestly have no idea how I'm alive. Like, I just, you know, from the hands of other people, from the stuff I did to myself. And my last night using, I tried to take my life one last time. And I guess like in the middle of it all, I don't even remember. I asked for help and then I kind of wound up here 3 days later.
Wow.
Fuck. That's crazy.
So, I mean, so you kind of had a little stint there where you kind of got into sobriety. That was like 20-ish or something like that?
It was like 10 days before my 20th birthday.
Okay. And so you put like a couple of years together or something like that?
No, not even.
Not even.
Yeah.
But
so it was, yeah, like close to a year and a half.
Okay. But I'm just trying to, so like was there like a point, because I know like that's kind of been a lot of similarities between some of the guests we have on, is like there's like a point where it's not as much fun anymore.
Yeah.
And people are like, okay, well, like this is getting to like, it just their perception of how their drug use and their alcohol use changes, where it's like it stops working, as we sometimes say in recovery. Mm-hmm. Like, what was the point where it was like it went from being like, oh my god, I'm having a good time, like this is the best time, like going out and drinking yourself and doing a fucking 8-ball or whatever, and to the point where like this is fucked, but this is just what I'm doing now. Like
15.
Really?
Yeah, like like my grandma was dying and she was in a hospice, and she, like, you know, the last few months of her life while she was still pretty, like, knew what was going on, she asked for me to sleep there, and I wouldn't go or sleep there unless I was fucked up from the night before, so I was a little bit numb. And I remember, like, I screamed at her one night when she woke me up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, and I was like, fuck, I'm a real piece of shit. Like, I should probably stop doing this, but I'm just not going to. And I remember sitting there at 15 thinking about that. And then I just, like, went home and got stoned or whatever the hell it was that I did that day. I can't even remember. And, you know, I just kind of knew from there that this is what it was going to be. And to be honest, like, when I was 19, I wasn't really ready either. I was homeless. I needed somewhere to live. It was like, I could live with my mom. I had no relationship with my mom up until that point. Like, I mean, we had a relationship, but it was very volatile.
Yeah.
Especially on my part. And, you know, like, that was the original. And I was kind of done to the point that I could have been done, but it's not the same as what it was like this time, right? Like, I just honestly, like, I thought I was going to live like that forever from such a young age. Like, it's hard to even really pinpoint an exact place. Like, I just fucking thought, this is it. This is life.
What was it? What was it like after that, like, year and a half that, like, led to the relapse that you had? Like, was it like a situational thing where it's just like, oh, I guess I can just, like, have a drink or something? Or, like, was it kind of, like, planned? Or
it's so messed up. Like, I was getting ready and I initially had every intention of, like, being sober. But then I was like, you know what? I never had a party. Like, I never had a party to say goodbye. Like, I just quit out of the middle of nowhere.
If you're gonna quit, we want to. That's like a common thing. We always want to have that, like, that big night out, the last night out.
That's what I said. I was like, I'm gonna have a goodbye party, and it was like a Friday, and then by Wednesday I was blacked out at a club back home, back alley on a Wednesday night, ladies' night, just blacked right the fuck out within 4 or 5 days, and being like, oh, here we go again. But I mean, I wasn't like, initially I still was dating shitty people, but I started dating somebody who was, you know, he's super, super smart, and he was, like, in school and super motivated and wasn't doing the same shit that I did before, that I thought it was going to be okay. Like, I didn't think it was going to get out of control so much, but that's just not the way it is, right? Like, I was the same person. He just ended up dating a psycho, unfortunately. Like, well, it's true, right? Like, yeah. I thought I had this control, and I didn't really quickly. Like, within 5 days, I'm sitting at a club blacked out on a Wednesday.
Right, and the last night out turned into a
week-long thing, and it became everything, right? And, like, it's crazy to me because, you know, people around me were drinking normally because I wasn't hanging out with the same people that weren't as bad at that time that I thought weren't as bad. And they were, like, drinking normally. They'd have, like, 1 or 2 glasses of wine, and I'm sitting there, like, pissed off that we're not having a whole bottle. And they just think that I'm this normal human, but, like, my mind is racing, like, I need more. How am I going to get more? Can I go home? Should I be able to stop at a liquor store before I go home? Like, it's just crazy how different how different my using always was to the people around me too, right? Like, in my head, I guess, does that make sense?
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Just not, I don't know. I've never understood, like, leaving a little bit of booze in the glass or anything like that. Just not, that's always been kind of my thing. And that was, like, my experience, even just finally being at a point where I'm like, okay, I'm, like, ready to fucking ask for help, to stop going to a meeting and having people, like, tell you, like, you never have to get loaded again. And I was like, yeah, but I got drugs at home. Like, like,
okay, so I won't drink.
I get that.
I got dope.
Like, I don't have to, but, like, I kind of do because the drugs are at home, and, like, I'm not at a point where I'm going to flush them. So
100% not going to flush them.
We can definitely talk, like, when I go home and I finish these drugs, but you know,
that reminds me of, like, my foolproof way of always, like, quitting or, like, doing, like, a tolerance break. I would be like, okay, what I'm going to do is it's easier to quit if I pick up and then have the drugs and then don't use them because I know I can if I want to. So, like, it's way easier.
Test yourself?
Yeah, no, like that's what I do all the time.
I'm literally still doing that with cigarettes.
Yeah, I would buy a bunch and then just, like, leave it, like, on the counter and then be like, sick. I didn't use for 3 days.
Yeah.
Like,
gonna celebrate with some drugs.
But I could at any time, right? Yeah. And then I remember, like, having these conversations with my brother and my parents and my girlfriend at the time of being like, yeah, like, I'm trying to quit, but, like, it's way easier, like, if I just have a bunch of drugs in the house because if I do want to use, like, they're there, but obviously I don't want to use because I haven't used them, right?
Yeah.
And like every time I ended up just using them anyway.
Yeah,
right?
like, it's just crazy.
Like to reward myself of 3 weeks of abstinence or something.
It's crazy to think like what people are thinking when you're telling them this. You're like, listen, I'm gonna need a pile of drugs for me to stay sober.
Yeah.
What the fuck? Yeah. Especially people without drug dependency issues. They're like, what the fuck? When I work in a bar and I literally have to like dump, people will leave like half a pitcher of beer. And I'm like,
yeah, what the fuck's wrong with
you? You paid $16 for that fucking thing. Like, I'm not only cheap.
You're offended.
I'm a cheap alcoholic. I'm like, you paid $16 for that. Like, you better fucking chug it. I'm like passing people straws to drink out of the pitcher. Not really, because that would be illegal. Yeah. But you know what I mean? I'm just like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
People are nuts.
I'm like that with everything though. Like, it pisses me off if I go like for dinner with someone and they only eat half the fucking plate. I'm like, bro, like, dude, like I would have ate the other half of that. Like, if you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
I'll meal prep and be like, I'm gonna have a bowl of this.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna have a bowl and the rest of it will be for my dinner tomorrow. I eat the whole fucking thing. And then I'm like, how did I just eat 5 fucking boxes of Kraft dinner? I don't understand how this happened.
I think that's an interesting thing for people who, like you said, don't have drug dependencies to kind of like try and get a sense of, and it's like a lot of us, like, we just understand that we have it, but it doesn't make any sense, like logically, like you're talking about, like having this delusion that having drugs in your possession will help you stay. So, you know what I mean? And that's kind of, I don't know, that for me, that was what was really insulting, I guess, when I went to that Smart Recovery meeting, was having Buddy be like, well, you don't need to smoke. It's an irrational thought. I'm like, yeah, like, sure, I don't need to smoke and have these irrational, I don't, need to, like, of course I want to have my own self-validation and not seek validation from other people and stuff. I want a fucking chicken that lays golden eggs, but like, recovery's not a wish list to Santa. Like, it's a process. Yeah, that would be amazing.
That's what I'm looking for that.
Yeah.
Well, I think the rationale I had was like, if I have an ounce in the house, like, then I'm not going to be obsessed, like, when I'm not using it, about like, I'm going to have less of an obsession because I know that it's there. Whereas like, if it's not there and then I'm going to have to, like, I'm obsessing about getting it already.
Yes,
and then I'm going to have to wait for like 2 hours for fucking Buddy to pull his head out of his ass and come over with it.
Totally.
Like, that's going to be like way worse. So like, it'll be better if it's just in the house, because then it just like, it lessens that obsession. And then it's like a choice, quote unquote, like when I decide to pick it back up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that was the rationale I had around it, right? Which is, I mean,
no, I totally understand it.
Like, no, like, I'm listening to you and I'm like, fuck, I should have tried that. Like, I don't want to try it anymore, but I'm like, I can't believe I never even thought of that.
Yeah.
Just have the bottle of wine. But I think also, like I said, like, there was no control. Like, I don't even think I ever believed that I had control. Like, at one point I was just like, oh, fuck. Like, and it was like an ongoing joke, right?
Well,
like,
I remember
you're an alcoholic. And I'm like, joke's on you. I'm just the fun drunk chick. They're like, it's Monday at 3. Like, you're an alcoholic. You've been here for an hour by yourself.
Well, I remember I used to have arguments with my buddies all the time and be like, yeah, we're all drug addicts. And they're like, no, we're not. And I'm like, yeah, we are, but like, it's not a big deal. You know
that
what I mean?
was me. Like, after I got sober for a bit, I would be coked out and I'd be telling everybody, I'm like, I hope you all know that this isn't normal.
Yeah.
Like, we've been up for 2 days. This is sick.
Yeah.
And they're like, what? Like, they're starting to get paranoid. And like,
you're just, ruining everybody.
Everyone's high, and they're like, what the fuck? And I'm like, it's cool, though. It's cool. We're all drug addicts. It's cool. Like, don't worry about it. We're just living life. We're just junked out. Woo! I think let's go.
That's interesting for me, is that you have the like, I never had the awareness around it.
Yeah.
That, like, it was actually a problem, like, that I had a problem or something, like, but that you actually were, like, had consciousness about. Like, no, like, I have a problem and I'm powerless over it. Yeah, it's just so interesting.
I think for me, though, like, I say to my mom all the time, like, I thank her for being sober, because, I mean, at a really young age, she told me that I had a problem. Like, she's like, I think she just knew. I'm so much like her, right? That she just knew. And I think, I know that her telling me those things really, like, helped me at least know, I guess, have some sort of awareness. It also helped me, like, not choose to do other substances. Like, I remember when oxys started coming out and everybody I know is doing oxys and they're like railing oxys. And I'm like, oh, I'm not fucking doing that. That's heroin. Like, I'm not that type of drug addict. Like, I can't do that. And, I guess like in some ways it worked out for my favor, but in other ways it's kind of insane looking at it or hearing it now, like the rationale of all of it, right?
Well, it was like you were talking about that we always try and compare like, well, at least I'm not as bad as so-and-so. And that was definitely a thing for me. Like, oh, well, at least I wasn't, it's not that bad because I haven't lost a job because of this or I haven't ended up.
Well, even the guys that we've had on that have like done heroin, they're like, they were talking about times when they were like, well, I was only smoking it. Like, it's not like I was shooting it up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
it's like, there's always someone doing it like worse than you, even if you're doing the worst thing. It's like,
I remember that.
At least I had clean needles.
You can be the homeless guy on the street with nothing, and you're like, yeah, but that guy was the same as me, but he's dead now, so like it's fine. And I'm like, nope, it's not fine.
We were talking about that with Jay. Like that was the thing between people who do coke looking down on people who do crack. It's like it's literally you're doing the same drug.
Well, and it's crazy. Like you don't even really realize it until. Well, I didn't really realize it until I got clean, right? Like I was just like, I just don't do that. Like I was just like, no, that's just like not my thing. Like I'm not that level. But it was when somebody I knew that was like one of my best friends that was like, you are just as fucked up. I would never do that. And I was like, what do you mean you wouldn't do that? Like for an 8-ball, you wouldn't just, I would never do something like that. I would never cross that line. And I thought she was worse than me. Right. And then I was like, oh shit. But then, you get sober and there's like a humility piece in it too, where when you get a little bit of time, like in your first year, you're comparing yourself to everybody, right? I'm not as bad. And then you kind of get to a place where you're like, I got to tell everybody. And I know that this is one of my faults is I got to be like, I got to tell people like I earned my fucking seat here. But the humility piece in it all is to be like, I'm no worse and I'm no better than anyone else in any of it, right? Like I was never worse off than or I don't know how I'm going to say that. Like I'm never as bad as and I'm never badder than, right? Does that make sense? Like it's just being like, I'm fucked. When I pick up, I can't stop thinking about picking up more. And when I can't stop thinking about picking up more, I'm not stopping. And that's all it is.
Yeah.
There's people in the program, like when I first got here that they were talking about they would only drink like a couple drinks. And I was like a couple drinks? Like that's breakfast. Right?
Yeah. You're like, no, you don't have.
Yeah, right? And I hate myself for thinking that I said or thought those things even. But I look at it now and it's like if you start and you have a problem stopping, or if you have the same feelings, that's where it's a problem. It comes down to the feelings part of it.
Yeah, you're right.
Right? Like it really does.
That's like when I got to Edgewood, like we were doing the drug intake or whatever, and they're like, oh, like, so like what's your daily use and whatever. And like at the time, because I was in psychosis, like literally I was only smoking like a gram of weed a day. And like I tell the lady that and she's like, you're lying to me. Like, tell me what you're doing. Right. And I was like, no, for real. Like I literally like, I've had way worse, like in terms of like amounts of using and like, and just like different drugs like in my life. But at that time when I got to treatment, like I could not handle more than like one gram of weed a day would literally send me to like outer space, like so fucked. Like people would stop me on the street and ask me if I was like okay, if I needed help, if they needed to call someone for me and shit. Like I was so fucking like whacked out of my head.
Yeah.
And like she couldn't, like the support staff or whatever couldn't understand. Like she's like, she literally was just like, people don't come to this treatment center like because they smoke a gram of weed a day, right? And I was just like, no, like I actually
you're like, but I did.
I actually do. Yeah. Like I was out of it. Like and yeah, like it's just like it doesn't even matter. It doesn't even matter the amount, right? Because there was lots of times when I was like smoking way more and like doing coke and like doing like way more fucked up shit like on paper. Yeah. But like that was like the worst part of my using. Like when I literally could only smoke like one hit and then I'm like the TV's talking to me and I'm like smashing shit in my room and I'm like freaking out and I'm like fucking duct taping the fucking vents and shit because like people are listening and stuff.
That's what the problem is. It's like how it's affecting you psychologically, how it's affecting your quality of life.
Well, it's not emotionally, spiritually, financially, physically bankrupt.
Yeah.
Right? Like I was like bankrupt. It didn't matter what it was at the end. And I think, someone else in the room talked about how we're alcoholics and addicts, like we're pain motivated people. And when drugs and alcohol weren't taking away the pain anymore, it wasn't changing what the situation looked like to me. I stopped using it, right?
Yeah.
Like in a way, like the pain was greater than what drugs and alcohol could relieve me of.
And
that pain was emotional, spiritual, financial, physically, right? Like I was falling the fuck apart.
That has been a common theme with the people that we had on, as far as like they just come to like a revelation, basically, which it was like when he was in prison with Jay. He was just at a Tim Hortons going ready to like had skipped the intake for rehab for like the 5th time or something, and it was just like, oh my god, like I can't do this anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Was that kind of like that was at the point where you got sober, was just like having some kind of like insight like that? Or
I don't remember asking for help. Like I know that I had just left like in the September. I got clean at the end of January, so in the September I just left a severely abusive relationship kind of on a whim. My mom had dropped me off or taken me to an AA meeting, and I remember listening to everybody at the AA meeting and being like, I'm not done. And I said to her, like, I'm not done. Like I'm just not done. And it got bad for 4 or 5 months, probably the worst it had ever been in my life. And I didn't even at that point, I was living in my dad's basement, so it wasn't like it was the worst conditions for me. But emotionally and all the internal stuff it was. And I'd asked for help in a complete blackout. Like I had taken a bunch of pills trying to kill myself. I had asked for help. All of a sudden, my stepmom's at home and I wake up on a couch, my face into the couch, and I'm like looking at my phone. My family's telling me I'm going to rehab. And I see like a Caribbean rehab center. And I'm like,
you're like,
hey! Right? I'm like, walk on, let's do this. I'm stoked. My mom's like, I'm not fucking sending you to a Caribbean island. Are you kidding me? You'll never come home.
Yeah, like I thought I was going to a place with like a hot tub and like we're going to play golf every day. And I was like, yo, sick, whatever. It's all good.
Rich.
Ride horses and stuff.
Wall Street.
I never thought that. I was like, my parents are trying to torture me for sure. Like they're not trying to send me to a fucking resort. Yeah. And I think my mom had told me because her boss had went there too. And she was like, yeah, he thought there was like a swimming pool and he came with golf clubs. And I'm like, okay, it's not that kind of party, hey? So, but.
Well, just to backtrack a little, like you said, the first time you like tried to, or like your family tried to like get you to get clean, you were like 16 and they got you into like a youth detox.
Yeah.
So like you said that they couldn't get you court ordered, or like what happened there?
Well, my dad, I don't think my dad wanted me to, they didn't want to go to the courts. I'm not really 100% sure. What had happened is I had ran away a couple times, got in an altercation with the police, so my mom was like, you need to make my daughter stay at my house. Like she needs to not leave. My daughter is like a risk to herself and whoever the fuck else is around her. And the cops were like, she's 16. She can really do whatever the fuck she wants. And I lived on that. So for me, I was like sleeping in the backseat of one of my boyfriend's cars for a while. And for me to go home, I have to go to treatment. My mom had finally convinced my dad too, like told him like this is necessary. I dropped out of school. I wasn't really working. Like I said, I was sleeping in the back of a car. It was fucking winter in Alberta. Like it's minus 30.
Yeah.
And so I like went, and then day 1 or whatever, I called my brother and I was like, you need to message my boyfriend or Nexopia. You remember what Nexopia is?
Yeah.
And get him to call in. So the next morning I get this call and it's like my boyfriend at the time, and he's like, they're like, your brother's on the phone. And I'm like, what the fuck's my brother calling me for? Already forgetting that I'd had this whole plan.
Yeah.
He's like, hey, what's up? And I was like, he's like, I'm selling weed and I got some money. And I'm like, okay, this is what we're going to do. You're going to arrive at 7 p.m. At 6:30, I'm going to get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
And I left. Like I wasn't even there for a full 48 hours. I think I slept. Maybe I spent 2 nights there actually.
Okay. Yeah, because like I just brought it up because like I got court ordered into like a youth detox when I was like 17.
Oh my god, the one in
like,
Cedarbrae?
No. Like that one's actually close to my house, but no, I went to Red Deer.
Oh wow.
They like sent me out to Red Deer. So there was no like running away really, right?
Yeah.
Like I was just like fuck. But it was weird because, and like it really resonates with me now, something my mom like said to me a couple months ago was just like it's really weird like on the outside when someone hasn't gone through it or like they haven't tried to like get their kids through this sort of thing. Like people just think like, oh, like send them to some detox or like send them like get them help, or like the government should have better help for people and stuff, right? Because like I remember when I was there, like this girl came in, she was like 14, like living on the street, like same sort of like thing you're talking about, and like she had like a bumps all over her tongue and she, like purple, and she was having like liver damage at like 14 from drinking.
Yeah.
This is Halloween weekend, okay?
Holy fuck.
Like 2 days before Halloween, and she's just like, I have this party I have to go to, blah blah blah, and she's court ordered, right? They picked her up in Medicine Hat, threw her in the back of a cop car, brought her in. She's kicking, screaming, spitting on the cops and shit. We were like, holy fuck, this chick's insane.
Yeah.
She's like, I don't have to be here. They're like, well, you can appeal it in the court tomorrow morning, but like, you got to sleep here tonight. So they take her in the morning. And then me and like the other guy that were there were like, oh, where's so-and-so? Like at like lunch or whatever. They're like, oh, like she got out. She appealed it. And the judge agreed with her that she didn't have to be here. And we were like, what the fuck? Like she was the most fucked up 14-year-old.
Judge?
She was the most fucked up 14-year-old we'd ever seen in our lives. And we're sitting there like both like, oh, we can't get out of here. And we're like, well, I guess we can. Like, if she could get out. It's like 2 days before Halloween, and she has like a fucking failing liver at 14 from drinking, and it's just like, she's fine. And so it's like, yeah, like there's a facade that like the system will help people, or that like that there's a lot of resources, but really like unless you're gonna actually help yourself, it's really hard to even take advantage of the resources that are there.
Well, I don't think we even look for them unless you want to help yourself. The second you want to help yourself, and what I've learned about being sober in any situation, it's kind of what we were talking about before we started the podcast, you'll do it.
Yeah.
Like the second you want help in any situation, you're willing to do it. Because like I mentioned earlier, like we're pain motivated people, right? So even when you're sober, you don't like something about yourself, you'll change it. Because and you'll ask people, how do I change this about myself? And if you want it, it's there. If you don't want it, it's not there. The shitty thing about addiction is that you can want it. Sometimes you're so in the fucking fog. Like I didn't want to be a shitty kid, but I was completely powerless, right? Like I didn't want to choose drugs and alcohol over my family, but I was completely powerless over it at the same time. But was it great enough? Was like the pain so great that I wasn't going to? No, it just wasn't.
Was it, do you think it was just like you didn't want to take a look at what the underlying causes were, or what do you think?
Oh my God, I don't even know. I don't think I really even today know all the underlying causes. I think, I think I was born to be an alcoholic or a drug addict. Like that's still a belief I have. I don't think that I was born to be loaded for the rest of my life, but I think that I was born for this sort of life. For whatever reason, right? Like I didn't really stand a chance, you know, just kind of coming into the world, I think. Like, and I'm at peace with that, but I don't really know. Like, I mean, and it's crazy because you read online, like so many people are like, trauma is the root cause of addiction. And then I'm like, holy fuck, like what happened? You know, sometimes I'm like, whoa, what happened?
Yeah,
and I know like most of the big stuff. Like, I know the big stuff that happened, you know, in my addiction situations I'd put myself in. I get that stuff. But then you think about other stuff and you're like, well, if it's all caused just from trauma and underlying issues, then, like, what about, like, I don't know, like, what about the 14-year-old girl? Like, you know, like you don't know.
Yeah, well, I think about that, too, sometimes. Because, like, on paper, like, my life is, like, not, like, a textbook traumatic, you know, life or upbringing. But like, there's definitely points where I'm like, okay, like that was like pretty fucked up. Like, it's like you were saying, I think before we started recording, of like people being like, well, people in Africa are fucking starving. Like, what's your issue, right? It's like, it's all relative, right? So it's like on paper, it's like, yeah, my dad's a fucking executive in some fucking big company and makes lots of money, and like I have like everything I want. What's your fucking issue? Like, what's your trauma, right? But it's like I have a lot of shit that relative to like my lived experience was like really fucking traumatic. And like when I've shared openly with other people that like on paper like they have a way more fucked up life. Like I remember this guy I talked to, I had like 18 months clean, and I thought I was, you know, new, like an old timer, and I'm taking this newcomer through the ropes, right? Yeah. And I talked to him, and he just was like, well, what's your story? And I told him for like an hour at Tim Hortons, and he just like, and this guy at the time, I'm looking at him like, this is the most fucked up guy I've ever talked to in my life. And he just looks at me like, that was the most fucked up story I've ever heard. And I was like, oh, fuck. Like, you're fucked up. I thought you're the most fucked up guy I ever met. Like, and my story is like, you're like looking at me like, whoa. And,
totally.
But ultimately, you know, I think it comes down to like you were talking about, like trying to change a lot of it is trying to change the way that you feel. Yeah. If you have, and that's something that pretty much everybody with some kind of substance abuse problem has across the board is they just don't like, and like you said, it's not always logical. Like X happened and then you felt Y about it. Sometimes you are just, people just be born with an abundance of negative feelings, and they don't have to be, not all feelings come from a certain situation or
well, like even when
traumatic
I was
event.
Kid, if I was angry, like my mom or something, I would bite my knee. Like to get over my feeling. Like I would bite my fucking knee. I was like 3 years old with bite marks all over my knee. My mom's like, stop, it's embarrassing. Like, like what the fuck, right? But I mean, it's hard because there's lots of people that have lots of different reasons as to why they use. But yeah, it's like exactly like you said, like I came out, I was born with an abundance of weird fucking feelings. I don't think they were all negative. I think that, you know, I came out highly sensitive, and I changed that, right? Like life kind of hardened me up in certain ways, and then the sensitivity would come, and I had to change that feeling, and then the hardness of my life would come, and I wanted to change that feeling. Like at the end, I felt so shut down that this is embarrassing, but I would get drunk, and I heard somebody share it at their take. I would listen to Adele in my room alone while I was like high and drunk just to cry because I wanted to feel something else besides shut down.
What's funny is there's a guy I watch on YouTube. And that was his thing, like being in a maximum security prison. That was his process for getting self-realization and growing. With like he would put on Adele in like
Adele's
level 4 fucking maximum security, cry.
Could you fucking imagine?
And this dude's like this gigantic like Lloyd monster,
just
like drill sergeant.
Just muffled like hello from the other side. Some guy crying.
Just like some 6 foot fully tatted Jack Lloyd.
Yeah, no, that's exactly
in prison. I can't believe. And there I am, like fucking 110 pounds, bawling in my bed to the same song.
Whatever.
Like so hard.
You can't knock the process.
You can't knock the process, and it's crazy because I've gone through moments in my recovery where I'm like, I think it's really easy for me to shut down. I think I'm an emotionally disturbed individual, like dead sober. I'm like, that should probably really fuck me up, but whatever. But it's crazy because now I just change my feelings with different things, right? Now I can like self-trigger when I'm doing it. I guess. Does that make sense?
Like when you like, not really, like elaborate on that, I guess.
I feel confused now. I shouldn't have had a coffee. I guess like even sober, I wanted, like, my feelings can be, I can still be, like, super highly sensitive or super hardened, and I still try to change those feelings now just without substance.
Okay.
Oh, I see.
I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Or some kind of substitute. Like, we were talking, like, we had a big conversation about, before the podcast, about, like, using gambling or shopping or...
Oh, yeah. Amazon, like, Amazon Prime was my bitch this summer. And now that I'm, like, it was my bitch, and I would like get joy off it, right? I'm like, yes, a new package. Like my roommate's like, what the fuck? Like you have a problem, and I'm like,
till the credit card bill comes in.
Yeah, till the bill comes in, right? I'm like, yeah, I do have a problem. It's fun. It's good. It's like the same rationalization. People are like, why do you need so much dope in the house to not use? Why do you have so much fucking Amazon shit that you don't need? Well, it's helping.
Because it changes the way I feel,
It's just it's helping how I feel.
Yeah, it's like being in a perpetual dollar store. Like, with when you get on the Amazon Prime thing where you're just like, I could use 20 rolls of tape. Like, I might as well buy it. It's $45 if I buy one roll of tape. Like, you know,
exactly.
It's going to be $5. So it's like, I'm saving money, and it's like, why not?
It's just crazy. Alcoholics and addicts, like, our rationale for everything is just insane to me. Yeah. It's something I really want to like fully understand, but I just don't know if I ever will.
No, I think people with
I have
PhDs and shit still have it's one of those things.
They're still trying to figure it out. There's no real answers.
Right? But that's what's interesting is like that's why there's no like, you know, one size fits all recovery program.
Yeah.
And even doctors and stuff. I mean, obviously I don't have any sources to cite or anything, and I'm not an expert, but that was stuff when I was reading about it. It's like there's lots of different things that work for it. And that's what's interesting, I think, for us having different guests on the podcast is like there's a lot of things that are similar, but everybody's own process had a certain personal experience. And I feel like that's a big thing with when people talk about spirituality, with bottoms and stuff. Like there's a subjective personal experience that has to be at the individual level. Like for that individual, it was this thing that happened at this time that hit them at their core,
Mhm.
you know, where it's like you could set it all up for a different person that might not work. It's just, that's what's super interesting for me. And I wanted to kind of follow it up with it. So what was the process after you're in a blackout, you ask for help, you find out that you're going to rehab, not a Caribbean rehab, and then you end up here in Nanaimo? Like,
yeah, I ended up here in fucking Nanaimo. So here I am.
Surrey by the Sea.
Surrey by the Sea. I was going to say that, but I was like, I don't want to tell anybody.
I'll put it out there.
No, hashtag Surrey by the Sea.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just like kind of ended up here. But like, you know what? I really, really, really wanted to be sober. You know, I came out here, I was 3 days sober. I didn't know that you could go to treatment fucked up. Like, I don't know why I didn't think about that, but I was like, who the fuck would want to show up to rehab fucked up? Everybody but me.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, what the fuck? People are like, what are you on? I'm like, life? I don't know. I have ADHD. I'm just super hyper. Like, I'm sober. I remember my mom being like, please don't drink on the plane. And I'm like, is she fucking nuts? Like, why would I drink before I go to rehab? But there was just something that had switched, I guess. Luckily, obviously. And I really wanted to be here. And I just have stayed ever since. I know that, like, I got in a treatment center relationship and they tried to ship me off so I would, like, avoid being in a relationship. But I was like, you send me back to Calgary, I know I'm going to get loaded out of spite because I'm feeling like a bitch now because I feel like you guys are fucking choosing him over me, which is, like, brings up all those issues of, like, abandonment. And then they wanted to send me to another treatment center and I was like, nope, I just did 50 days here. Like, I'm not doing another sentence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not one in Vancouver where I've partied quite a bit in Vancouver. And, you know, it was kind of like drilled into my head that I can't go home. I'll die if I go home or whatever, right? So I ended up getting into, actually, it was a complete fluke. This woman hadn't rented out a room in her house in a really long time. And she met me. I reminded her of her best friend and she took a chance on me. And
Wow,
so I walked right out of treatment. I didn't go to the secondary program or anything like that. And it was fucking hard, to be honest, because I was now living in a house with this woman with a 2-year-old. I had no fucking idea who they were. My boyfriend's in the treatment center still, but he's not my real boyfriend to me at that point in my mind, right? So I'm like confused about what the hell I just did. My whole family's far away. I know nobody except for a couple people that were doing like home trips.
Yeah.
And in Nanaimo, right? And I'm like, oh my God, now it's like now or never.
Now it's on, yeah.
Now it's on. And so I started going to a shit ton of meetings. Like sometimes I would go to 3 a day. And you know, in your first year, you're super pumped on recovery, right? And at least I was like, people would make fun of me and say I was jacked on recovery. But I'd feel sick. I'm like, yeah, I went to 3 meetings today. I get a gold star in the recovery.
Yeah.
Right? I'm like, I'm fucking killing it.
But I mean, that's just it. It's like we wanted to talk about like what does a life in recovery look to someone, and like what that's the thing is people have to realize is that, you know, just getting into a rehab, it's not like you pass the goal line and now you're safe. It's like, what does a life in recovery look like to people, and then like coming back out into the quote unquote real world, and like what gets you through that first year, the second year, that kind of stuff, I think is super important. And whatever it is for different people, like, you know, if it's going to lots of 12-step meetings, mm-hmm. or if it's, you know, like what does it look like for people? What helps them get that time? Well, I think there's like that umbrella, like there's the umbrella of like what you're told to do, right? So you go to mm-hmm. lots of meetings, you get a sponsor, you start doing the things that you need to do, get involved in service or whatever. And I did all those things. And as a result of those things, I stayed sober, so I didn't pick up, right? So when I didn't pick up, I kind of just got this new life. As a result, people started relying on me, including my family, even though they were far away. So that was something that made me want to stay sober. Like I got a chance to be a daughter for the first time, right? Like, because I really wasn't growing up. And I got a job and I started just like, I don't know, like it's hard to talk about what a life in recovery is like, because it's like, a life in recovery to me is like, wow, like it's like being able to know that you can actually do anything. That you can actually be an adult, like, and do anything, like normal people. Yeah, I've lived in the same house for 2 fucking years. I've paid my own rent for 2 fucking years, and like I changed light bulbs in my house like a couple months ago. I cried, dude. I like took a second and cried. I was like, I never thought I was gonna be able
to change a light bulb in my own home by myself. I didn't have to ask a guy for help, nothing. I bought myself a bed as a result of like having a good job and showing up. I've never owned a bed. I never had a bed that a man couldn't take away from me or my family couldn't take away from me. Right? Like those were the gifts. Like a life in recovery is just like, it's like fucking showing up and fighting every single day for yourself, I guess, in whatever way. And showing up to everything. It's not just about meetings, right? It's about like showing up and being a member of society, like holding the door for strangers, even like calling my family, going to work, paying taxes, doing all those things. It's like, I don't know, like I feel like when I was loaded, I didn't even think those things were something I had to do.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, you're just totally, I think we had talked about that, just like you have to have integrity, and recovery is about accountability, I think.
Yeah, totally.
That's a big part of it. You know, people talk about connection, and obviously connection's huge, right? And but you build those relationships with people, you build relationships with society in a sense. You build you mend or build relationships with your family, even with partners and stuff, right? Like that's one of the hardest things for, I think, most people in recovery is like romantic relationships, right? Like sustaining healthy romantic relationships. But it's just one of those things where it's like, it's about work and accountability.
Totally, right? And communicating. And you have to do that with all your relationships, right? Like even with my family, sometimes I have to like set boundaries or like communicate how I'm feeling about things. And in relationships too, like it's about really knowing what you're worth, what, you know, and I don't know, like romantic relationships in recovery is always a touchy subject, right? Like I have like pretty morbid beliefs about it, to be honest. Like, I'm like, okay, so I was 3 years sober when I broke up with my boyfriend. And I remember looking at my sponsor's husband and being like, recovery is fucking hard. Like that's when recovery got like so fucking hard to me. When you're in a relationship, you know, someone had said to me something like, you're not as desperate when you have a partner. And that's what's scary about people getting in a relationship in the first year. And I was like, I was so offended. I was like, do you know what kind of history I come from? Like, I come from a history where men like rape and beat me, and that's all I'm there for. Right. And I'm like, it is hard for me to be in a relationship where someone's not doing that. Like, that's a struggle for me. I'm desperate as fuck. And they're like, no, you're not. And then when it was kind of gone, I really saw, you know, recovery is harder. But I think like, you know, I don't think it's okay to shame people for being in a relationship in their first year. Like I'm so grateful for him. Like he was a big part of how I stayed sober, right? That was somebody that I relied on. And I'm so grateful for that, because at the end of the day, like sometimes I needed that, right? Sometimes that was enough to keep me around. And people will say things like, I hear people say things in the rooms like, don't come to the rooms to pick up chicks and stuff like that. And like, absolutely, like, don't do that. Like, don't practice the 13th step. But if you
we're not definitely not
condoning
that shit.
No,
for sure.
But if you're coming to the meeting because you think there's a hot guy there, fucking sit down in the chair and listen, and then hopefully something sticks eventually. Like, I mean,
whatever gets you in the room.
Whatever gets you, and that's kind of like what I mean, like morbid beliefs. And like, there was a point in my recovery where when I was in a relationship where I was like, am I going to go out if something bad happens to this person?
Yeah, right? That's the risk. I think that's what people are trying to avoid. It's like, well, you want to be good with yourself and work on yourself enough so you're not dependent on another person. But it's one of those things where I think there's a lot to expand on what you were talking about there, is that people are going to do what they want at the ultimate, at the end of the day. We were talking about that before we started the podcast.
Yeah.
You're saying like, there's no laws. Well,
there's a lot of gray area that I don't think a lot of the gray area is talked about, which I didn't think a lot of in my first year too. Like there's a lot of gray area. For me, you know, when somebody wants to be in a relationship, I say the desperate thing and I'm like, just know that, right? Like just know that this person is making things a little bit easier on you. You know, knowing that person can go out, like I made a fucking decision. Like I am not going to go out, because when your partner goes out, it's a lot like, well, that's like your best friend, right? Like that's your best friend. And when you're sober with somebody, it's like you make, well, at least to me, I made this like secret pact where I was like, we're going to stay sober together forever. Him and I, we are Bonnie and Clyde of sobriety.
Right. And then Clyde goes out.
Clyde goes out, or like whatever. And, you know, you just have to really make a pact to yourself and stay open and stay connected with people. And a lot of people, I felt really, really shamed by a lot of people when I first got here. People were telling me every day that I was gonna fucking die, that he was gonna die, that he was killing me, that I was killing him. And I really, really, really struggled. And I've had a lot of guilt from that, but I worked through that. And I just know that my truth is that I have to stay open. I have to stay honest. And if somebody doesn't like what I'm doing, I have to make sure it's all right for me. If I truly believe that this is the right thing for me, and everything in me is telling me it is, I'm not that shamed by everyone else. That's their shit. That's not mine. I take what I like and I leave the rest. And I just take care of myself and I go to other people to talk to other people about it, right? Like,
I mean, that's a tough one too. Like that's another one we can expand on, like, totally, is that this idea of it's hard dealing with just judgment and people shaming you for your decision. If you come in with a relationship, if you're in a dysfunctional relationship, if you get into a relationship in your first year, because like you said, there's no laws, like there's nothing, you're not going to get court ordered to break up with your boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever. But it's just, like you said, it's hard. I think it turns a lot of people away when they're finally getting vulnerable and asking people for help to be a sponsor or whatever, and they're just getting shut down and shamed and judged. I think it does push a lot of people away.
Well, and it's like I said, though, like, again, like, if you fucking want it, you're going to work for it. I really wanted that relationship, so I fucking did everything I could in my recovery to make sure that I wasn't going to get loaded, right? I got fucking multiple service positions. I got sponsees before I had a year. I went to 1,000 meetings. Like, if I really wanted it, I knew that I had to just take care of my sobriety. And everyone's opinions in the rooms is generally about my sobriety. So if you're scared for it and I'm not willing to give it up, like, what am I going to do to take care of my sobriety? And I did that. But when it comes to people feeling shame, like I said, like, our disease wants us to feel a lot of shame. Like, that's the sort of shit that takes people out. If I'm okay with what I'm doing, I'm not feeling a lot of shame. And the other thing I learned in the rooms is that every single person, somebody in that room, even if you're in a room full of, like, say 10 people, someone's done the same shit you're doing. You're never fucking alone. And that's
true.
The piece that the connection is so big. So you want to get help, you want this so bad that you want to get help to have it, then you'll do whatever the fuck it takes. If that means you got to talk to 15 women, then you talk to 15 women. I did. I talked to 15 fucking women.
And if there's one that you don't get along with, you're just like, okay,
you take what you like and you leave the rest, right? Like, okay, well, that worked for her. That's not what I'm willing to do today. So I'm not going to do that today. I'm not willing to do that. Like, you're allowed to say that.
You can always come back to it. That was one thing that I noticed for myself, at least, is that sometimes somebody would say something that I just was straight up not in a mood or ready to hear. Mm-hmm. But they can always come back to it when you're in a better place. Be like, oh yeah, I know that they had a point. I just wasn't ready to look at that shit.
Well, like, that's like the desperate piece, right? It wasn't until I was like fully like, oh my God, what am I doing with my life, that I realized what she said actually made 150%.
Well, and to be fair, like, to that point as well, like, the kind of the course of, like, of your previous relationship, just over the time of us being in the rooms and being here in Nanaimo, like I would say that, like, example is, like, the most successful example of, like, an early treatment relationship or anything like that I've seen, and it still ended up with, like, you guys breaking up down the road. Right. Whereas, like, a lot of them do, end up with a lot more catastrophic, like, consequences or whatever. Mm-hmm. Whereas, like, you were able to maintain that relationship for a long time and it ended for, like, whatever reasons. But, like, I just think, like, of, like, the probabilities, it's like, if that had happened, like, rather than 3 years down the line when you're, like, have the service positions, you're, like, ingrained in, like, the community at, like, 4 months. Like, that's like a whole different ball game, like, where you're going, holy fuck, recovery is, like, actually crazy, and you're not really, like, a part of it. Like, it's not like something that you're like, oh, I need to, like, recommit to. It's like you're basically starting from square one, right? Where a lot of these relationships end up, where it's like, someone's relapsed after a few months, and then this person who has time is, or like 6 months of time or whatever, is trying to, like, recommit to the program, and they're going through all this emotional shit, and they're not really connected. And it's like, those people, unfortunately, a lot of what I've seen, like, probably 100 instances of this, like, usually at least one of them goes out, if not both of them. So I can see, like, why people, like, especially in treatment, like, treatment centers and counselors and stuff, like, harp on it a lot, because it's like, the probabilities of it working out are like really, really low. And I like I said, like your example of how it's worked out for you, like still wasn't really like the happy ending Bonnie and Clyde riding off into the sunset kind of thing, right? Like it was like.
But I think like there's some, like, I just think I never want people to feel like they can't sit in the rooms that they want to be in a relationship, right? Like you earned your chair, and it's definitely a suggestion, and I can see why it's a suggestion, right? But for me, like that person's like very, very special to me still to this day. And, you know, any relationship, whether like, cause I've been in other relationships since that ended, and like any relationship is hard when it's two alcoholics and addicts, whether you're sober or not. Learning how to communicate what your needs are in a healthy fucking way, like that's the struggle, no, regardless. Whether like I couldn't date a normie who doesn't know how to communicate their feelings, right? Like whether you're in recovery or not.
That was one thing that's interesting that somebody I think Janelle was talking about was, and I can definitely relate to that, is like you date a normie, and then it's like they're not aware of their own undesirable character traits.
Undesirable defects. Let's just call it what it is. They don't know what a defect is.
That's what, they don't use that terminology, defects of character, but that's essentially like they're not as cognizant of their like, you know, negative personality traits, and they're not looking at it like, oh, I'm being really, you know, intolerant right now, or I'm being really stubborn or something like that. They're just kind of unaware of it a lot of the time, and that makes it difficult when you're seeing it.
But again, like the greatest piece that I've learned in recovery is that it's never about the other person. It's always about me and what I'm gonna do about it, right? Like it's not like, and that fucking blew my mind when I got here. I was like, my boyfriend's being a dick, and my sponsor was like, nope, your boyfriend is doing a perfect job of being who he is. And I was like, no, it's wrong. And it's like, it's never about you. It's never about me. It's always about me. It's never about the other person. It's always about you and your behaviors, because that's all you can really control anyways. And I think that we get into these relationships, or at least I can speak for myself, that we're so codependent before I got clean that that's kind of what I'm looking for now, just without dope. Right. And I can only control my outcome. I can only control my sobriety. I can only control what I want my life to look like and what I want my half of the relationship to look like. And, you know, the greatest thing about getting, you know, dating other people and like getting into relationships is kind of knowing that now, and then knowing what I want and what I don't want. Like what an amazing gift. Like I never thought I was going to be able to figure out what I wanted and what I didn't want. I just wanted to be with somebody no matter who they were and what they had. Right. But now I want certain things for me where I feel okay in whatever relationship it is, I guess, if that makes sense.
That totally makes sense. It's nice to be like, okay, I'm going to actually choose a partner, not just like, I want somebody right now. I definitely remember being like, I don't know, a couple of like maybe 3 months. And then this woman sharing about like, I'm okay being alone. And I was just like, no. And I just had to walk out. Like that to me at that point, I was just like, so unready to fucking this concept like that I had to be alone. Do you know what I mean? Like it was just like I need any partner right now. Just I don't want to be alone. And then to actually, like you said, be in a place where you're good with yourself, and then you can be patient waiting for the right person and not just jump on, you know, the first
jump
person.
Jump in to anything else that you're willing to settle for or whatever. Yeah, I mean, and it all comes down to, I think, you know, it's like going back to the whole, we're newcomers for the first 5 years. Like we're changing so much too. Like we don't really know what we want. But I think like as humans, I know for me, like I'm 29 now, and I'm like, when I was young, I thought I was going to be married, have a kid and all these things. Like you see all those memes and stuff, right? And now it's like, fuck, I'm almost 4 years sober. I want to be married. I want to have a kid. I want all these things. And I think like, we get here and we're like, okay, well, we have fucked our lives up so bad. It's time, right? Like right off the bat, it's time to get all these things. And that's not the way life works. Like you have to practice that integrity and accountability, and those things kind of all just happens the way it's supposed to happen. Right? Like I really, really believe that stuff kind of just happens the way it's supposed to happen. It's kind of crazy.
On its own time.
On its own time, and the way that we work. Yeah. But and like, the way that we work. I guess, like, I don't want to say the way we work the program in our lives, but the way that we practice integrity and accountability makes sure that everything that we ever need and want will be taken care of. Like, anything that doesn't serve me anymore kind of just goes away on its own.
Wow.
Like, at least that's been my experience. But with a lot of work, right? Like, it's always a lot of fucking work. It's so much work. Being sober's got to be harder than just being a normie. Maybe that's the wrong thing to say.
I don't know. I mean, life on its own terms is, I think, hard for anybody. You know what I mean?
Totally.
It's just, you never know what's gonna come down the pipe or whatever. Right?
Do you ever talk to like any of your old friends back home or anything like that? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, and like do they have like, I don't know, because like I have like these group of friends back home that I talk to, and like certain people that I'll talk to maybe like once every few months, but like my core group of friends I'll talk to like every other like day or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And like I can't even talk about recovery, or even they don't even get it. Like they like in their mind, like I like live in like a treatment center still.
Yeah.
I'm, like 4 years in, and they're like, are the people nice to you there? And I'm like, what people? Like my roommates? Like I work, like I fucking, you know what I mean, I pay my own bills, like I'm just a normal person. I just want
to be a normal person in society. Like let me be normal.
I go to meetings if I want to.
Yeah.
Like it's not like someone's like, okay, like you made your bed today, you fucking, you know, like it's just, I don't know, like it's so hard to like explain to people.
I think, you know, there's different types of people. There's some people that saw you so messed up that they're just so happy that you're okay. Mm-hmm. Right? Like I have a few of those friends. I have friends that are like, well, you can probably drink again one day. And I'm like, no, never. Mm-hmm. And then I have friends that don't understand. They're like, well, you're not a crackhead, or you're not. And it's like, holy fuck. Like, here we go again with this whole having to be like a certain type of way to be an alcoholic or a drug addict.
Yeah, it has to fit a certain image. And if it falls short of that, then it's not a problem because they just have no kind of understanding or empathy, I guess. But
like, I don't talk to my friends that I was up with for like 4 or 5 days.
Yeah.
Like, I don't talk to those friends. Yeah, but I got really, I mean, I don't want to say I got lucky, but my best friend of 15 years lives out here now too, right? Like, she just took 2 years. So like I got lucky that way, right? Like, I always get a piece of what friendship has been to me my whole life with her, right? Like, so fucking lucky. Like, you don't get to see that lots, right?
Yeah.
So, but I mean, it's hard talking to other people. Like, I remember I went out with my first friend when I went home, and she was like, can I have a drink? And I'm like,
oh, fuck, I hate that.
Drink. Like, I don't care. Like, it's not, I don't obsess about it anymore, right? Mm-hmm. You kind of feel weird with those people.
Yeah. That's one of the, what's interesting for me is like, that's the only drug that's like, that people are like weird around, is like, there was like a meme that was like something to the effect of like, drinking is the only drug that you have to justify not using to other people.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like maybe a little bit with people smoking weed, but usually they're pretty understanding. They're like, you're like, you can even say something like, no, I get anxiety. I don't fuck with that shit. Mm-hmm. But like, drinking is one where like, even that comes up like at work and stuff like that, I'll notice people be like, oh, you don't drink at all? Like, you always have to kind of like answer to not drink, which is interesting.
Yeah, extended family things with me is the worst. Because like I always thought that like I was the black sheep. I'm like the drug addict. I'm like the worst guy. And then like being in recovery, like seeing like my extended family, and I'm just like looking around like, holy fuck. Like it's just like a big rager, and it's just our family members, and I'm just like, oh my God, like how am I the only one that like got sent out here? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was funny, like this summer I was at my cousin's wedding, and one of my cousins just like all night was just like, still haven't drank tonight, man? Like, come on, man. Like, it's been 3 years. I have a beer with me. I'll buy you a beer. And like our uncle is like, he's not in the program, but he doesn't drink. Mm-hmm. And like, he's the bartender. Mm-hmm. And like every time we go over, he's just like, hey, Uncle Blair, pour us like a two doubles, right? Me and Josh, come on. Like, and he's just like looking at me, and I'm just like, and he's just
I'll take a water, shake it.
Yeah, and he just knows that my cousin's being an idiot, right? Yeah. And my cousin's just like, I'm gonna get like tonight we're gonna drink. Who cares? It's one night, man. Come on. And it's like,
it was a weird conquest for
no, I love it. Like I love the guy, and like he's the best, but I'm just like, he's never gonna get it. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like I'm not even gonna try to start explaining it to him.
Fuck, it's so hard. I mean, I got lucky. Like most of my family's in recovery. Like I have an auntie in recovery, my mom's in recovery, my stepdad's in recovery. So it's like, I got really lucky like that. I haven't really experienced that. I experienced that with a couple of my friends.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard. I struggle with not being like, you're an alcoholic.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I struggle with.
I did that the first year a lot. Like, with my buddies, like, you should really question, like, you know, this and that, like, what you're doing. And they're like, fuck off.
Yeah, they're like, I'm good.
Yeah.
Like, I am so good. Or they're just, like, not willing. And then I'm just like, no, but I want you to have the life I have. Like,
yeah, but that's one of the things that I noticed, like, both people who are in active addiction and normal people definitely is this huge turnoff for both those people when you get sanctimonious and you start trying to fucking push, like, no, you have a problem.
Well, could you imagine? Like,
dude, fuck off. Like,
my mom did that to me. It was like the biggest buzzkill in the world. But like, imagine your homie.
Yeah.
Like, just got out of rehab. You're fucked up too. You need rehab. And I mean, honestly, I did that to my friend that's sober now. I was like, listen, we have a problem. She's like, I don't have a problem. I'm like, no, you do. She's like, no, I don't.
My favorite with the family gatherings is like the 11 o'clock speech is what I call it. Because like I'll always have like at least one family member just shittered. And they come to me at 11.
Proud of you.
I'm so proud. They're like spitting in your face, yelling over the music, and you're just like, all right, man. Like it's thanks. You know, totally. They don't even remember, and they're just like spitting all over you, and just like way too close in your personal space. And you're just like, yeah, man, yeah, it's pretty good. Like,
because they're a midnight meeting. I gotta go.
2 years is fucking sick, man. Yeah, and it's like, oh god. And
okay,
it works like every time. By 11 o'clock, it happens every time.
Yeah.
So there was one topic that I really wanted us to get to before we finished up, but that was we wanted to talk about, like, of course, like, kind of ties into relationship stuff and making it, like you said, just doing whatever you need to do for your recovery. And I think it's important that we talk about, like, having a support group of the same sex for the person who's in recovery. I think that's a really good point to expand on, in that we've been talking about just being someone in recovery and some of the trials and tribulations that you deal with being in a 12-step fellowship, right? And just like, for me, you know, I'm grateful that I can have like healthy friendships with women, that I can have like healthy relationships with women, whether they be a romantic partner, whether it be like a platonic friend, you know. But I think, like you said, there's something important about having a support group of people that you're not sexually attracted to.
Well, 100%. Well, I mean, for me, like, I get weird talking about it when it happens in the rooms, because I don't want people to have this idea that this is what happens all the time in the rooms. What I know, and in my experience, is that a man can't teach me how to stay sober. End of story. First off, mostly because of the place that I came from, I am not about, like, when I did my first set of steps, there was so much stuff that I couldn't fucking understand, right? Like, the word "the" looked like the biggest word in the world when I was, like, learning what was going on with me. And I needed it to be a woman. There was no fucking chance in hell that I was going to say to a guy that I was sexually attracted to, I don't know what this is.
Yeah. I
wouldn't have given myself a fighting chance. I don't know what that means. I'm not going to ask for help to some dude that I want to bang. Like, there's just not a chance. I mean, maybe today. I mean, I wouldn't have a male sponsor today where I am in my life. But a woman can teach me how to be a woman sober. Like, it's hard being a woman in recovery. Like, it's really... And I'm not saying it's less hard for men, but it's really hard when all of a sudden your body is completely different. Like, I remember waking up one day and being like, who the fuck am I? And I had no fucking idea what was happening with me. My emotions were up and down. I had no idea what self-worth was. Like, to me, I've been an object my whole life, and I objectified myself my whole life. You know, things that a man can't teach me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember that was actually, I think your friend Heather saying that was like really, I found to be like insightful. Was she basically said, it doesn't matter like how much time a man has, or how much they've read recovery literature, or what their fucking degrees are. They do not understand the experience of being a woman in recovery. Well, I think that's totally valid.
Well, they don't. Like, it's baffling to think that they could. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm sorry. Like, it's just like, like everything fucking changes. Like I can't explain to you like the physical changes your body goes through and then the emotional changes, and all of a sudden like your emotions are your fucking emotions. They're not going anywhere. Like your feelings that you can't mood alter, they're there. And I can't imagine asking somebody 100% for that sort of help. Maybe somebody else could, but the other thing is, like, why does a man want to help me when I'm brand fucking new? Yeah. Especially a man with time. Like, I'm a psychopath. Like, I'm still a psychopath in 4 years sometimes. Like, I'm batshit crazy. You think you're going to be able to fix me? Every dude in my life before thought they were going to be able to fix me, and they couldn't, and I ended up here, right? And I thought that people could fix me, and they couldn't, and I ended up here still. So, I mean, I have to kind of go back to that thinking. I remember when I got to treatment, I thought I was going to get back together with my ex-boyfriend. And my counselor was like, why would somebody who wanted you in addiction be a good idea for you to go back to sober? Like, what's wrong with that person too, right? And I always kind of looked at that when I thought about men and women working together. Like, if you want me when I'm like this and I've done no work on myself and I had to go to rehab to be okay, like, what the fuck is wrong with you?
Oh, yeah. Well, I think about that too, like, with, like, just in general, like, that there's, I mean, in terms of the numbers, there's quite a few less, like, women in the rooms. And, like, I think it's, like, as sad as it is, it's just that, like, women can kind of, like, stay at, like a bottom for a lot longer with, like, and it be, like, acceptable almost, you know what I mean?
Oh,
like,
really?
because, that's the way I think about it, is, like, you know, like you were saying, like you kind of shacked up with this like smart guy that's like going to university, right? And like, and all of your friends are just kind of like they don't know that you're going through all this shit because like on paper you're, you know, you have all these things and you're doing well, quote unquote, right?
Totally.
But like you're dying inside, right?
Yeah.
And like I feel like just with like the way society is or whatever, like it's a lot easier. I mean, for a guy to be at that bottom where like it's easier for other people to recognize because it's like, oh, you're a loser. You don't have a good girlfriend. You don't have a good job. You don't have this, that, whatever. Whereas like women can get sucked into this whole thing of like, well, I have a boyfriend that has a good job or whatever. Like I'm doing fine. And it's like, and it creates like this facade, like where you see like, you know, like these women that are married to like multimillionaires that are like in total denial that like, that they should be in treatment and like their kids are like all doing well and stuff. And you're like, but you're dying. You know what I mean? Like you're in a bad place and they can't get to terms with that. Right. And like, it's fucked up because it's just, I feel like it's just a kind of sexist dynamic of just the way society will be like, oh, like, you know, it's fine because like she's a mom, or it's fine because like she's doing well, like in terms of where she's at in her relationship. Whereas like with a guy, it's like, you can't really be like a hardcore addict, or most people can't, and like have like a lot of the things that like a woman could at that level, you know what I mean?
Well, I would like to almost challenge that in the way that I think it's easier for women to stay at a bottom sometimes because, well, I think that a lot of women that are drug and alcohol dependent are in incredibly domestically abusive relationships that they can't get out of. I also think that it's, you know, you see a homeless guy that's going to steal from somebody to get money to buy dope, where you see a woman that's homeless where a guy's going to be like, suck my dick and I'll give you dope. And that's almost easier than going and stealing, right? I think that sometimes it's harder for women because it's easier to, I guess it's the same idea, but it's easier to stay high because it's so much easier for us, unfortunately, to objectify ourselves, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, even saying that out loud breaks my heart, right?
Yeah, like it's sad.
It's so sad, but it also... I
think that it's like the reality in a way.
Well, and also like, you know, I think also like men get sober thinking guys want to get a good job, you guys want to get a house, you want to get a hot girlfriend, you want to get a dope car. Like that's a man in their first few years. And then a woman, we get here and our feelings are so fucked up that we just want to do so much. And I mean, we all, not all of us, lots of women don't. I got in relationships and did all these other things before that. But I also started to do a lot of internal work right away because I couldn't handle my feelings.
Right.
There's so fucking many of them where men want all these things. And it's really not even about being an alcoholic or a drug addict. I think men are taught in society that they have to be providers and they need to have these things. And then eventually they have these things and then they're in this emotional turmoil where they're like 5, 6, 7 years sober and they're like, oh, I got to change shit.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. Yeah, that was something my sister brought up. She's like, how many women do you know that like just get out of a 60-day rehab and want to go to fucking work on the rigs in Alberta? Like, it's just like, but you have, that's one of the things that men struggle with, is that they get a sense of status from work and material and financially. And like you said, women have their own like struggles. Not that they don't have those struggles. Not that women don't get status from having, not that everybody in society gets status from where they work, and then that's always a struggle, like trying to get status.
Totally. Society's status.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think, I just think it's really important that I had a woman teach me how to love. I find it very interesting that women come into the rooms and they're like, oh, I don't trust women. I don't like women. I don't trust women. And, instantly I go to a place that's like, really? Because all the men you were with treated you so well that you think all these men are going to treat you well?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, your best friend fucked your boyfriend and now you don't like women, but your boyfriend fucked your best friend.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Men fucked me up way more than women ever did in my addiction. And maybe I got lucky that way. But I needed to have a woman guide me through life. Right? Like from a woman's perspective that like loved me enough till I could honestly love myself. And I still need that. Like and as a woman, maybe it's my age too, but I feel like I'm ready to be like a mom, and I'm like want to nurture. Like my favorite thing to do with my ex-boyfriend was to like cook for him and like take care of him. And I was like, who the fuck am I? I don't care about anyone else but myself. And I got to learn how to be like a nurturer and a loving human. I learned that from a woman. I never had a man teach me how to do those things, right? And I don't know if that sounds sexist, but those are the reasons that I always did it. And it's like, I don't want to be having sex with a dude and talking about the 12 steps.
Yeah.
Like that's not sexy.
No.
To be honest. That doesn't do it for me. So it's just like, I'm going to work with women about this and I'll go do whatever the fuck I got to do with guys later. Right? That just made me sound horrible. But
no, I think that was just keeping it really real tonight, and then which is awesome.
Yeah, like and then that's just the way that I think about it, right? Yeah. Like it's just. But again, like I really want to say, like you're not a shitty person for falling in love in your first year either, right? Like there's nothing wrong with that. You just don't fall in love with your sponsor. Like I can't even imagine telling my sponsor I'm in love with her. Like she'd be like, "What the fuck is wrong with you? You need help."
Yeah.
Come on, you're what?
But like you said, it's about forging bonds with women, because like you're talking about, just being able to relate to a woman who understands the experience and can guide you through that process of being a woman in recovery.
Isn't it like that as a guy? Like I feel like even as men, like you guys don't come in here knowing how to treat a woman correctly. Right? Like you don't. Like, I mean, honestly, you're selfish and self-centered in your addiction, just like women are.
Yeah.
Like, don't you want to learn how to be a dude too? Like an honorable man that has integrity? Because like, I don't know any men that came into the rooms that were like, oh yeah, I'm 100% accountable.
Yeah, it was a white knight in shining armor out there.
Right? Yeah, that just strolls into the room on his horse and just parks it outside before he goes into a meeting. Not so much.
And that was one of the other points that I was going to talk about is, just having like men's and women's meetings.
Yeah.
I think that there's certain stuff, like you said, there's certain things that you're only going to feel comfortable talking about with another woman. There's definitely stuff that guys feel or do or go through that they're only going to be comfortable talking about with other men.
Well, like, I don't want to talk about my jealousy issues with a dude. Be like, I don't know why I'm like this. And I'm sure a guy doesn't want to be like, wants to talk to a girl about that stuff too, like right off the bat, like when you first get here. Or like, you don't want to, like, as a guy, I don't think you want to be like, I've gained 50 fucking pounds. I used to have a 6-pack. I used to be jacked and I did nothing. And now I can't stand looking at my body. Like men have the same issues. I just can't relate as a man. But it's important that not just women work with women. It's important that men work with men too.
Yeah.
Go be with your bros. Like go live your best life. I want someone in my life that's healthy and accountable and all those things. And I can't teach a guy how to do that because a man's integrity isn't going to look the same as mine.
And that's what I was saying is like, I think, and I talked to a bunch of women about this. It's just, they were saying that what their experience was when they go to like a women's only meeting, they found that women were able to get more vulnerable and were able to reach out better with other women than they were at like a co-ed meeting. Per se. And then that's a huge part of it is, like you said, building a support group of women and learning just how to trust, because we just come in here into recovery with trust issues, just with people.
In general.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In general.
Well, have you been to any men's meetings?
I have, yeah. And there's certain
feel
things.
like the same thing there, like that men get more vulnerable at a men's meeting. I mean, from my like limited experience, I've probably gone to like 20. Like, I don't really feel like that.
I don't know. I mean, there's definitely certain things that men are going to talk about at a men's meeting that they're not going to talk about.
But I don't think it's like, I don't think it's
I'm like intrigued. I'm like, so what do men talk about at men's meetings that they won't talk about?
I don't think it's like vulnerability as like, or not like in the it's a lot, maybe a little bit vulnerable, but like it is kind of ego driven. A lot of like that I've heard like people talk like,
I don't know. I can't
talking about like sexual issues or talking about relationship issues in like in like a boys club kind of. Like, oh man, like, you know, I just want to get laid kind of thing, but like, you know.
No, I mean,
I just want to get laid, but I'm in my first year.
Yeah, but it's not. Yeah, but it's not really like it's not really like vulnerable. It's just kind of like.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, that is what happens though.
Yeah.
Like in men's meeting, they're gonna talk about. I mean, there might be a safe space to complain about their relationship with their wife or something like that, or it might be a safe space where because.
Not all the time. I mean, like I said, I've only gone to a few, but like just like there has been things that I've heard that I'm like, I'm only gonna hear that at a men's meeting kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not gonna hear that at like a co-ed meeting where.
Well, honestly, I feel like it's more that women's only meetings are more important than men's only meetings. That's my opinion of it.
Really?
I think so.
See, I think it's equally important, and I'm a woman. Like I think it is, but I just think it is. I think it's really important that we all just like take care of our same sex and we all learn from our same sex how to take care of the opposite sex too. Like I really do. I think we're all equal in that, right? I know that vulnerability is a topic on its own.
Yes. Let's get into that.
Yeah, like vulnerability is fucking hard. Like I remember somebody suggested to me like watch Brene Brown, Vulnerability. And I watched it and I messaged her and I was like really highly emotional about it because I was like, I don't think I've ever truly been vulnerable. I think you're vulnerable about a certain amount of things, but like again, like when I go to a meeting, I present myself as someone else. Like when I first got here, I thought I was a thug.
Yeah.
Like I straight up thought I was a thug. Like I swear to God on everything. Like I still sometimes I'll watch Love and Hip Hop and I still think I'm a thug.
You're just
like,
one of the,
I'm just like, that's just like who I think I am in my core.
Just the baddest bitch.
Yeah, I'm the baddest, most gangster bitch. And that's how I present myself sometimes. And I don't even mean to, right? At a woman's meeting, like I know that's not gonna fly. Mm-hmm. Like, you know what I mean? It's like,
just not
I don't want to be a gangster bitch at a woman's meeting.
Yeah.
I don't want to be like, yeah, fucking.
But they'll call you on. I mean, and that's the other thing.
Is they'll call you on it. Yeah. Imagine a woman calling you on something at a fucking meeting, being like, that's wrong. And you're new. You're like, whoa, that bitch is nuts. I don't want to come back here.
But I think that was the other point is like, again, I remember my sister telling me it was about like if women are going to call each other out on shit that a man, like, let's just call it what it is. Like, a lot of men, if the problem is that if a woman's talking to a man about something or she's, acting out in some like negative behaviors, like a man's more likely to co-sign it to try and get laid. Like, whereas a woman will fucking call her out on her shit.
Well, yeah, it's all about motives. Cause like, I mean, playing the devil's advocate, a woman could call someone out on the same shit for their own shitty motive, right?
Right, yeah, for sure.
But like I get what you're saying too. Like I'm not trying to play the devil's advocate to this. I totally am 100% with women and men with men, right? I think though, like going back to vulnerability, like it's really important to me. Like I was sharing with you guys before, like my roommate saying to me, like, I thought you were someone completely different and where I'm in my life today, like, I mean, I'm probably going to listen to this podcast and be like, oh, fuck, that was way too thuggy. Or like, that was way too not who I am as a human. But I want to show up everywhere that I am as my true, authentic self today. To any sex, to any job,
yes,
to anything, right? Like, that's what I want. I want to be my true, authentic self. And
it's scary.
It's terrifying. Like, because at the root of it all, it's about, I don't want people to know how I look at myself. So what I've learned in this last year and why this year's been so crazy for me is like, take away all the drugs, take away all the alcohol, take away even the relationship. And I'm left with all these negative beliefs of myself. So like I have this deep rooted belief that everybody is going to leave me for drugs and alcohol. Like it is just this belief that I have because both of my parents, my dad, whatever, like, you know, like I believe that everyone's going to choose drugs and alcohol over me and that I'm not enough for someone to stay. And, or that I believe that I'm damaged. Like these are honest to God beliefs that I have of myself that I would never talk about. I'll talk about it now. I mean, obviously I just shared that with whoever, but 4 months ago, I wouldn't have said that out loud.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the problem. That's the thing about vulnerability is like we were talking about a little bit before the podcast is like you look at the word vulnerability means leaving yourself open to be hurt or be attacked or in a lot of places and a lot of situations when you're out there and we're talking about like people. I mean, we're having CJ on next week. People who are in combat in the military, people who are in, you know, some of our listeners and some of our guests have been in like organized crime situations like that. If they're in prison, like fucking vulnerability is dangerous, really dangerous in those situations. You just, it's a risk. Like it's a survival technique, literally, that you don't present.
Well, you don't want to be selling dope and being like, I'm terrified to give you this rock.
Yeah.
Give me your cash.
Even in like in relationships, like I just got into a relationship with this girl and like she was saying to me that like some of the stuff I was saying to her before we were dating and like some of the stuff that I said like on our first date and shit was like a lie. And I was like, that's not a lie. Like I was just fucking joking or like whatever. I was just trying to keep it light, like because I barely knew you. And I was kind of like, my first reaction was like, oh, why is she fucking like nagging me? Like she's trying to find like a lie and it's not even a lie. Like we're just talking about whatever. Right. And then I'm like, oh, it's because like my like first like reaction in that scenario was just like, oh, like I don't want to get vulnerable when she asked me this question, so I'm just gonna like make some jokes about it, and then
I think we all do that.
You know what I mean?
Self-depreciate, joke about stuff as a defense mechanism.
Yeah, and then further down in the relationship, I'm like opening up and being more vulnerable with her, and she's like, well, then why'd you tell me this on like our first date? And I'm like, oh, you know, like because I didn't know where this was going, and it's too big of a risk to be like open with you because like my mind is just like, don't tell her that because like she's gonna think you're fucked or like whatever, or, like she's gonna like not like that, and then like this is gonna be like first and only date kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
And it's like that's something that I've been learning a lot like over the last couple months of just like you said, like trying to show up authentically, and like even when I have something to say that like everyone in the room's not gonna like agree with or like might like be angry at me about or like might need me to clarify about, like just saying it and being like authentic to myself, because like just placating someone and being like, yeah, I totally agree, or like whatever, like sooner or later that's going to come out in the wash, right?
Totally.
Like because sooner or later they're going to see your authentic self and they're going to be hurt if they feel like you were, you know, lying about it in the past, even if it's just some small stupid little thing, right?
Well, and I think like to me, when I'm not vulnerable, I am perpetuating those negative beliefs, right? Like I'm not worthy of telling you how I truly feel. And that's what I've really learned. Like, that's why I'm like, okay, yes, I believe, like to my core, I believe that I'm damaged. Cause I'm just like, if I'm not telling people that and I'm self-deprecating when I speak, like, I mean, I'm very self-deprecating. I'm like, holy fuck, I'm such a loser. I'm such trash or something like that. Right. And I don't really think I'm believing it when I say it, but I'm perpetuating that belief
by saying it,
by saying it over and over and over and over again. Like it's easy. It's easier for me to say that I'm trash than to say good morning to a stranger sometimes, right? And I don't want to be doing that, and I don't want people to think that that's how. Well, to be honest, I don't want it to be a reflection of how I am in recovery either. Like I don't want people to hear me share or me say something and be like, "Oh yeah, I'm trash." Like I wouldn't hear somebody say that and be like, "Oh, I want to get to know this person. I want to be vulnerable with this person." I'd be like, why would I want to be myself with this person when this person doesn't even like themselves?
Yeah, and they just think of themselves as trash.
Yeah, right? Like, why would you? And I remember my girlfriend said that to me, and I was like, ugh. Like, I can't believe that she's using that against me. And then I started telling people that I work with about it. And then I was once like, oh, I'm trash. And they're like, you're not supposed to be talking about yourself like that. And now I'm like kind of in this place where I'm practicing like self-triggering, I guess, to an extent. So I'm like, oh yeah, I shouldn't say that, right? Like on my way over, I messaged my friend and I was like, oh, I hate myself. I'm so anxious. And then I was like, okay, I'm lying. Like, I don't hate myself. What a cool opportunity it is to be involved in something like this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's super cool. And it's all as a result of doing at least some sort of work, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sticking around.
And like you said, or trying to go the other way, and instead of being self-deprecating or saying things that are negative self-image, you go the other way, and then all of a sudden you're the most gangster bitch out there.
Yeah, 100%.
And that's what a lot of people do, is they try and put on this kind of big ego. It's the facade. Yeah, it's playing a character, and in a lot of ways, it's like you're not honoring your true self.
Well, 100%, right? And like, I this is gonna sound so cheesy, but I want to save the world, and I don't want to be like saving the world as a facade. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I don't want to be showing up to somebody that needs help and being like, I'm a thug and I'm gonna change your life and we're gonna do this. Or I don't want to be showing up as like this person that's like, I hope that I can help you even though I'm very damaged. Like, I want to show up as someone that's like, this is what I did and I know it worked for me and I believe that it's going to work for you and like we can do this together, and like be humble and helpful and myself in it all, right? Because that's when it's rewarding. Like, I feel rewarded that I said that out loud, and that now I've really ratted myself out. And whoever listens to this now, if I call myself trash, I'm probably going to hear about it. I'll probably
You're not allowed to call yourself trash ever again.
Yeah, right? But you know what I mean? Like, those are really good rewards, and they really, like, it goes in, I hate this, like, term, but that spiritual bank, right? And it builds that self-esteem that I need, because again, drugs and alcohol are gone, but the beliefs are still there. And eventually, if I don't change those beliefs, what the fuck am I sober for? Right? Like I said earlier on, like I want to change lives. I want to save lives. I want to help people. I mean, that's what I'm here for. And I want to help myself too. And to help myself, I have to stay sober, and I didn't get sober I guess that's what what you talked about like earlier on, like that underlining reasons, right? Like, I guess I always felt like I was damaged, and I want to get rid of all those sort of things so I can, I don't know. Now I feel like I'm rambling on about it, but if I change those beliefs, then I'll never use it again. What the hell am I staying sober for if I always believe that I'm damaged?
But like you said,
I'd rather be damaged and drunk
than
damaged and sober, to be honest, right? Like, I'm an alcoholic.
I was just gonna say, and I think it comes a full 360, and like and for people who will get some time and then relapse, and then get some time and relapse, it's like, if you're not gonna, you have to work on changing and exposing those negative beliefs and negative feelings and all of those, the past and your thoughts, so that you continue to have sobriety. Totally. Because if you like you said, if you take the drugs and alcohol away, but then you're still trapped in these negative thoughts, these negative beliefs, all of these negative feelings, and you don't have a positive way of dealing with them or working through them, then aren't we inevitably just gonna end up going back to the drugs?
Well, wouldn't you want to?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah,
almost, right. Like, and that's the way I look at it. It's like, I mean, I remember in my first year, somebody had said to me, like, it's so easy for you. Like, you don't understand. You want to be sober. And I was like, I want to have a drink just as bad as you want to do whatever you want to do. Like, I abs 150%. I'm an alcoholic. That's what I want to do. That's it's engraved in me. But now that I'm sober, I don't want to do that. But if I keep thinking the same way, like, I'm obviously going to go and do that again. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's like, I want to drink, but I don't want to give up my sobriety.
Yeah, I don't want to give up my sobriety now. Like, oh God, I can't even imagine now. Yeah. Giving it up. Like, I know. I just like think about everything that I have internally now that I don't want to give up. Like, just that peace of mind, not cringing when I look in the mirror, not wondering where I've been, what I've done.
Yeah, not wondering who I've hurt. The mirror. That's a fucking underrated gift, right?
Like, actually, the biggest unrated gift.
Who wants to look in the mirror at like fucking 5 a.m. after a night of like staying up, doing blow and shit? Like, no, I wasn't doing that.
I still struggle with looking at the mirror at 5 a.m. today, just because I'd rather be sleeping. But I get what you mean.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah. But that's what I mean. It's like, I look at those things now, like, oh, I get to look in the mirror at 5 a.m. to go to my job.
Yeah.
Right?
And be okay with
and be okay with, yeah. And the other greatest gift, is learning that I am passionate about things like recovery and learning that I have a purpose, right? And I learned that I had a purpose by working with other people. Right? Like I realized that that's why I believe like I was born to be an alcoholic or an addict. Because I think that that's what I'm supposed to do eventually.
That's almost kind of like spiritual in itself, I guess.
Yeah.
Without being like a big mystical whatever, right? It's like just stuff like that, like having purpose and connection you can chalk that up to being something spiritual that's not like
godlike.
Yes.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. I think that and that's what I mean, like the universe will put whatever I believe, like things that are supposed to be will happen and things that aren't supposed to be will be taken away. And as the opportunities present themselves, it's how I handle it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I think like you're saying, like thoughts and words like matter so much more than we give them credit a lot of the time.
Totally.
And it can actually like just fuck you up so bad when you are having like just negative self-talk or just like a negative outlook or just negative like language put onto like anything.
Even when it's
right?
subtle, and maybe especially when it's subtle.
Or even even for me, I've been thinking about it a lot and trying to I've just been thinking about it a lot recently of just changing, even just being like, oh, like this is the way I am. You know what I mean? Like sentences that are like, oh, that's just how I think and that's just how I talk, or like, you know, like and like actually realizing that words kind of matter.
Yeah, because you don't want to get it. I guess you don't want to get locked into some kind of like self-fulfilling prophecy in a sense.
Yeah, like, well, even like, okay, like it's as simple as like going to the gym so much this year, right? And like trying to lose weight. Like now I have a buddy who came into the gym with me, and he's like he's like further behind where he wants to be than I am, right? And he's doing all the things that kept me from wanting to do the gym, right? Like, and I keep telling him like, look, man, like you're starting from a place that you're gonna fail. And he's just like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, dude, you fucking go down to do the bench and you're saying, oh, I'm only going to be able to do like 5 when we're supposed to be hitting 7, right? And I'm like, don't say that. Just fucking do it. And I know you can do 7 because I'm watching you. And so he's doing it, right? And like I know he can do 7, right? And he gets to 6, and he gets down, and then he's going up, and I'm spotting him, and he's like, help, help, help. And like I didn't grab the bar, I just put my hands under, and then he's just like. He just lifts it, right? I didn't even touch the bar. I just put my hands like I was going to grab it. And he gets really fucking mad at me like, dude, I told you fucking help, blah, blah, blah. He's just like, I couldn't fucking do it. I told you before we started that I could only do 5 or 6. And I was like, you just did 7. I didn't grab the bar. And I didn't grab the bar because I wanted to show you that you could do 7. Because you keep telling yourself that like at the end of every set that you're not going to be able to do 7 and you'll only be able to do 5 or 6. You're never going to get to the point that you're going to be like, I can do 7 if you're starting from a baseline of like, I'll never be able to do 6.
Yeah, it's almost like there's one guy, John, who's like a really smart dude, and that was something that he was always saying, is like a belief is just 2 thoughts that you have. Mm-hmm. But once you put those 2 thoughts together and turn it into a belief, now it's like it's harder to change it because you start to internalize it and stuff like that.
Well, that's why you have to change the behaviors. That's why for me, vulnerability becomes so important, because I need to be talking about the behaviors as to why I'm doing certain things, right?
Yeah. We had like a bit of a heated moment, and then we hugged in the gym because he was like yelling at me, and I was kind of getting mad at him like, you could fucking do it, man, you know? But it's just like, yeah, like it is hard to change those beliefs, and like especially around your own like self-worth or your own ability or potential. Like it's easy to get down on yourself, like you were saying before, like being like, oh, like I'm this age, I should have this or whatever. And like, oh, when I was 18, I thought I would have fucking like the house and the wife. And like, oh, my parents were married at this age and shit. And it's just like, holy fuck. Like you go down that road, like, yeah, then you already failed at life. Just like fucking, you know, what's the point of being sober?
But if
you can get yourself there so quickly. Like if you allow yourself to like think that that's what your life's worth, being like, oh, like I didn't hit this deadline that's just arbitrary and I set for myself.
Yeah,
but like
totally.
You know, like you said, like it's kind of, or like you were saying, it's kind of that humility of not comparing yourself to like how much better you are than this person or how much worse you are than that person. It's like trying to look at what kind of growth that you've been making compared to where you were at, and then trying to improve that growth, I guess.
100%, and just like never really giving up on trying to improve it. Like I think that I'm sure that there's other beliefs in there that I'm not so prominently believing that are gonna come up that I'm gonna have to change too, right? Like I believe that every guy was gonna like beat me when I first got here, and that belief's been smashed by not being beaten since I got here. Woo! Gift of recovery.
Nice.
Yeah, right. So, but like it all just the thing is, and it's like you just, you know, as much as there's a gray area, you do have to put in the work, whatever that work looks like for you, right?
Yeah, but that's important. What you're talking about is just because a lot. I think one woman was telling me is like a lot of people stop putting in the work, and they get to a certain point and they just don't put in the work to continue their growth. Yeah. And like you're saying, like that's what the growth looks like after you've already been clean and sober for 4 years, right? Mm-hmm. Like you're not struggling to get through the day without getting loaded, you know, like somebody would who's, you know, whatever, 60, 90 days in or something like that. But you're there's still all of these places that where growth is paramount to getting better and to getting further away from a place where you're so miserable that you're thinking about getting loaded again.
Well, exactly, right? Like I just have to do whatever it is, no matter what situation I put myself in to stay sober. And the longer I stay sober, the more I want to grow in different areas. Like the world is my oyster, right? Like when I first got here, I was like, I want to do social work in school. And then I talked myself out of it and I got scared. And now I'm like, I want to do life coaching, but not just life coaching, like relationship coaching and spirituality and motivational coaching. And then one day I want to open a non-for-profit society where it's like helping women that are coming off the streets. And like 7 months ago, I didn't have A, those goals, or B, I had no idea how I was going to get them or what I was going to do or if I could even talk about them, right? But like just doing a little bit of work makes the world open up so much more. It's like I was saying, like, going to the beach and like hearing the ocean actually and not being so convoluted in my own shit in my head or like, you know, things look greener when you're doing the right things. When you're not doing the right things, it's like, it's harder to stay sober. Yeah. For sure.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and even like one thing I've been trying to do is just like acknowledging negative things and like when I expressing them in a way that's not like absolutes, you know, rather than being like, oh, I'm stuck at this shitty job or like, you know, like I can't do this. Just be like, I feel like I can't do this. Like, I feel like I'm stuck here. Like totally. That opens a door to like, okay, like how are you going to get out of that feeling? Whereas like when you're talking in absolutes about yourself or like just thinking in absolutes about yourself, like it's so much harder to like get that door open the inch it needs. So then you have those opportunities so you can set goals and you can do those sorts of things. Right.
You're just reinforcing the belief that I can never do this. You keep saying I can never do that.
Well, and in a way, that's just making it easier for yourself because like if you say like it's not a possibility, like you don't really fail. You know what I mean? Like you're not opening yourself up to failure.
Because it was never an option.
Because it just wasn't even an option. You know what I mean?
The one thing I've heard around the rooms that I really, really like is the whole I get to. Mm-hmm. I get to go to this job. Even though I fucking hate it, I get to. Right? And when I think about the I get to's, it's a little bit better. Because I don't like everything I'm doing, but I wasn't doing any of it when I was loaded. Right? And I really didn't like what I was doing when I was loaded.
Yeah.
Word. Well, I think that's a good place to wrap her up. I mean, it's been
oh my gosh,
like a while. Yeah.
We've been going.
Yeah. That's what I love about this. It just goes on. Like and it just keeps flowing. So Ashley, do you have anything you want to like plug or like any last sentiments or
I don't know, I feel like I said a lot of things that I'm was super vulnerable about. Thank you guys so much for having me. This has been a really
Thanks for coming on. This is a very gangster podcast.
Very gangster.
Yeah. So if you want to come onto the podcast, just hit us up on Highly Addictive Podcast at Gmail or on Facebook. You can get your questions in. We are doing that gift basket. We're still getting the gift baskets together. So we're gonna run a raffle here pretty soon, probably in December, I'm guessing.
We'll see when we get the gift baskets together.
Yeah,
and you gotta break out your wallets and shit, man. Get at them.
Word. And we're just so everyone knows, we're doing the gift basket so we can get more equipment for the show. So like we want to set up like some cameras and microphones. because right now we're just kind of running off one mic on like bare bones equipment here.
And we get it. I mean, not for anybody who's at this point in the podcast, but it is definitely hard to digest the 2 hour and something audio clip. So we'd like to eventually get to just, you know, a format that's shorter, like videos and stuff. So it's more engaging for people, more digestible.
Yeah, exactly. So thanks again, guys, for listening, and
thanks again, Ashley, for coming on. I think it was
so
really
cool.
Awesome, and you put like a lot of great stuff out there for people to listen to. I'm sure they'll enjoy it.